Good morning, everyone. On behalf of TGS 2020 and TIE Hyderabad team, we would like to welcome and thank you all to be here today. My name is Rashmi Ghosh, Executive Director at TIE Pune. We are having a panel discussion on strategizing for a successful exit, part 2. We have Prashant Palakurti, CEO at Reflex Systems, Shri Mainini, CEO and co-founder at Noha Solutions and Noha Soft, Kishore Kotapalli, partner at SVP India and managing director at MRL Projects Private Limited as panel speakers, and Pradeep Mittal as a panel moderator. Pradeep is a CEO at Great Four Systems. He is a serial entrepreneur with the investments in 15 plus startups. He has successfully exited from several companies, founded Magna Infotech as the India's largest IT system servicing company with 8,000 employees as exited, currently running productivity software for life sciences industry as SaaS model. Charter member of TIE over 20 years as a partner at SVP, mentor NGO to scale and sustain the activities, and visiting faculty at IIT Hyderabad since 2014. Kishore, Prashant, Shri, and Pradeep, welcome and thank you for joining us today. Over to you, Pradeep.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the people joining from all over the world. Thanks a lot, Rashmi, for the introduction. So, I'm sure this is like a little bit odd for all of us, the speakers and myself, as being a virtual on the particular first time. So we will try to stay to the topic of strategizing exits. And as Rashmi said, I'm Pradeep Mittal. I logged in from Hyderabad, and my friends Sri Maineni and Kishore Kotapalli are logging in from Hyderabad, and Prashant Palakurti is logging in from Boston. So let me just introduce the speakers very quickly to you, and then we will get to the questions about their exits, and then we will probably open the session for the Q&A. So Sri Maineni has founded two companies, Noha Soft and Noha Solutions, a product company and a services company. And he exited the product company earlier and recently exited the service company very successfully. Kishore Kotapalli has run many other industries, including manufacturing and all that. But recently he built a very successful tech company, MRL Postnet, and he exited very successfully. And Prashant Palakurti is again a veteran in entrepreneurship. He has many firms, if you look at his LinkedIn profile. And recently, he exited Reflexes, which is sold to Jebra Solutions in Boston. And we will probably discuss that more during the session. So, Sri, Kishore, Prashant, are we ready?
Yep.
Okay, thank you guys. And Sri, the first question is to you. Since you have been running these firms for a long time, and you have done both the product part of it and the services part of it. So the question is, how do you go about doing the whole exit process during your exit of both the firm that you have been successfully built from scratch?
Thank you, Pradeep. First of all, I'm excited to be here, and good morning and good evening to everyone around the world. When you look at exits, Pradeep, we had two. One is products and other is services, like you said. When we look at the product, we're a mid-market voice over IP, workforce optimization product with 250 customers spread around the world. But when we constantly look at what's happening in the market, there's a lot of consolidation that's going on, and there's a lot of OEM relationships being formed by bigger companies to eat out all the smaller players. When we saw that shift happening, we realized either we go raise money and become a part of the bigger player, or just get acquired and be part of a bigger company. So we decided to basically sell the company at that point to Avaya, because they wanted to play in the mid-market with the workforce optimization, which they were lacking in that space. So that's how we kind of decided to exit. So we're constantly watching what the competition is doing, and how you should shape up your exit strategy based on that, whether you raise money or whether you become part of a bigger company. When you look at the services, we were 3,500 people spread across 4 regions: India, US, LATAM. What was happening there is we were listening to customers. You have to focus a lot more on customers, know your customers. And they were mainly focusing on consolidating their vendors because of the cost, as well as bigger offerings, broader offerings. They wanted more language support. When we saw writing on the wall, either we go acquire companies and be a part of a bigger player. As part of that, we acquired a company in Honduras and we grew that company almost 1,000 people, but it took a lot of time. And when we saw that, how difficult it is to acquire and make yourself much bigger and bigger, we saw the writing on the wall. Either we get acquired or we might lose our bigger companies. We had almost 15 companies; those are billion or more in revenues. So we decided at that point we might as well join somebody who's much bigger than us. That's how we got sold to 24/7 InTouch. I still work with them. I'm on the board of the company. The new company now is 18,000 people spread across 10 countries. So that's kind of what we did. You keep watching either customers or market and decide where you are, whether you want to exit or you want to raise money or you want to, you got to think through that constantly. This is not something that you wake up one night and say, hey, I want to sell my company. It has a lot more to do with the market and customer dynamics.
Thank you, Sri. I will come back to you with some follow-up questions. Let me first ask Prashant. Prashant, since you exited multiple companies and recently your current company Reflexis, and you keep talking about planning the exit, planning the company for the exit, planning yourself for the exit. So can you just go through the motions of how you went about ensuring that your company was ready for that?
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, thank you. It is such an honor to be on this stage with such accomplished entrepreneurs like Sri, Kishore, and yourself. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for making me a part of this. I think I call exit as excitement, without the C in it, excitement. And that's a very dangerous disease. And I was inflicted with it many times. I was bitten by it many times. And I can speak to it with certain authority as a man who failed in that. So I built this company. I thought I should sell it in 2003, 2004. Some company came to buy us. And I was so anxious to sell it that I sent my wife to India and Hyderabad and said, we're going to move to Hyderabad, go find out schools for our kids. So in other words, I had schools lined up. I had my kids prepared to go back. I got a place in Jubilee Hills somewhere to build a house. All of that was there. But the exit process made me take the eye off the ball. So the first thing I would warn entrepreneurs is, if you take your eye off the ball, the damn ball will come and land on your face and you'll just fall down. And that's a horrible thing to happen. So excitement is a very dangerous thing. Excitement is a very, very dangerous thing. You should do it very carefully. And there's a reason why we do that. We build companies so that we can get some kind of an out in that. So I failed in 1999. I failed in 2006. In 2006, almost I had no money left. So, but one of the things I did was I was using my own money, my friend's money, because I wanted to ensure that the capital that I built, I was using capital in a very conservative manner, very South Indian manner, very old-fashioned manner. I very conservative in the way I managed capital. So shares, I was less, gave out. So from an exit perspective, every time I focused on exit, I fell down. And like Tenali Ramakrishna's cat, at some point of time, when people would say exit, I would get scared. So in 2013, after running the company, the two very, very large companies came to buy us. Two of the largest companies in software came to buy us. And I just refused to sell the company because at that point of time, I started seeking joy. And I gave up on this chase of exit from 2008 onwards. And I started believing in things. I started believing in a product. And the product that I built was making a real change. So our software helps retail associates, large enterprises, manage their frontline workers in an intelligent manner, using mathematics, using logic, using personal preferences and capacity of the individual and all of that. We were the first company which was able to assemble all of these together and build it out. And I really enjoyed working for this, and I started seeking joy. And I just didn't want to sell at all at that point of time. And the question you asked, Pradeep, was when did you know it was ready? Is, it's never correct, because there are two different answers to that. There's a time when you say, I want to exit. There's a second thing is, I think my company should exit. They're very different things. As an entrepreneur, you frequently mistake yourself for the company. You want to exit, so I will sell the company. That's a very wrong thing to do, because there are a lot of other people who depend on the company, including your customers. So when you are confused, I would suggest to the following: go to a guru. And my guru was my favorite entrepreneur in Boston, Jit Saxena. I went to him and said, what should I do? Where am I? So, one thing is the board will fire you. So most probably, no guy starts a company and takes it public. Very few, very rare. That's like lightning, in a bottle. You shouldn't expect that. Most probably you'll be fired if you don't do well. So if you're fired, it's a very simple solution. The board fires you, go and sell what stock you can and find out which kind of beer you like, and sit down and relax. That's one choice you have. But if you're not, then the second, what happens to you, you go seek a coach. I would recommend strongly. You talked about strategy, Pradeep. Go seek a coach. For me, it was Jit Saxena. And he said something very intelligent. He said, Prashant, you found a second mountain. You want to do something else in life. And therefore, I think you should leave this company. Let the company be where it is. You go. And the best way to do that is, and by the way, guys, this is going to cost you money. Everybody hearing this, you must put $10 into my account. I will send you later for this advice. This is just fantastic advice. He said you should go hire a mini-me. That Austin Powers mini-me, the little guy? You should hire a guy. Make sure he's from Harvard or Stanford or some big college. Because those people are experts at writing PowerPoints. So you need that guy, and every idea that you get, run it by him, let him present it to the board. So then you become less and less important to the company. And then when you sell, you go. So that's the way I was prepared to do that. And the board kind of smelled it out. And they said, okay, fine, Prashant, let's go find. And we sold the company. So there's nothing romantic. There's nothing, it's a very ordinary story of multiple failures and looking for mini-me. I think if you want to subtitle my looking for an exit, the answer to you is, I found a mini-me, and then the company got sold.
Thanks, Prashant. I think that's a really good point. And that's not an easy answer to hire yourself in the company and then give the reins to that person. So, Kishore, I just want to know from you, how do you strategize your exit? Like, when did you decided that this is the time that I think I should now sell the company and all like? So can you just share your experience on that?
Yeah, thank you, Pradeep, and thank you all for listening in onto this very interesting session by my peers. We were in the business, the last exit, which was a big one for us, was Immortal Postnet, which was in the business of providing card transaction facilitation at the merchant outlet. This, instead of online payments, this was offline payments. This is a business which had very high entry barriers globally, because it was only the big boys who could play in it, because it was a very, very high fixed cost business. We decided to take a different tack and said, let's variabilize all the costs and then bring technology to bring the variable cost close to zero. So using that, we built a very interesting, innovative platform. And in 5 years, or close to 6 years, we managed to grow to 35,000 customers. And on a $3 million investment, we were actually having an EBITDA of over $3 million annually. Our biggest challenge was growth. We were not able to acquire customers fast enough, while we believed that we had a fantastically scalable product. But there was no proof of the pudding anywhere. On 8th of November 2016, the government of India announced demonetization. And between then and the 31st of March of 2017, we grew from 38,000 merchants to 123,000 merchants. And we were able to do this with a headcount increase of 3, from 138 to 141. So that essentially proved to us that we had a great product, which was highly scalable. And the next level for us that we wanted to grow was to 1 million customers. And to do 1 million customers, we needed $100 million. And that was the decision point that we sat down and we kind of talked about it and decided should we go and do a capital raise, or should we look for an exit? At that point, we were having run rating at about $11 million of EBITDA per year by the time April 2016 came, 2017. When we sat down and we sat down with our investment bankers and a great team of people from investment bankers, lawyers, tax consultants, and other friends. We were trying to understand what is our basic strength. Our basic strength obviously was in developing this platform. And our biggest weakness was in acquiring customers. So do we go ahead and build a new strength of acquiring, on how to acquire customers globally? Or do we look at an exit? And it also was writing on the wall to us that what we had was not an IP product. It was just a process, and a process that we thought through very diligently, and we had automated everything. So it was if we let this thing run for a long time and we continued with a slow pace of acquisition, we ran the danger of a buy versus build, where the larger corporations could just go ahead and build a similar product like ours, and we'll be out of business. So the strategy at that time was to go look for an exit. And to look for an exit, like I said, assembling a top flight team. And it was a global team, which we had supporting us from the investment bankers, like I said, to the lawyers and everybody. And the leadership team was not involved in the exit process. And this is a key difference I would like to make, because we said exit, as Prashant said, may happen, may not happen. And we did not want to lose the focus of our business on by going after the exit. So we said the management team had a clear charter to increase the profitability of the company in the next 1 year in the year 2017 from $11 million to $20 million of EBITDA, whereas a separate team was constituted to look at the exit. And I think that having feet on both sides of the ground, either run the business or exit, was the biggest and the sanest decision we had taken in terms of strategizing for the exit. And I think that is the key essence that I would like to tell people, that planning, there are two ways of making money. One, the old-fashioned way of building a business which has good, healthy cash flows. And second is trading up your business in terms of a valuation gain. But once you try to mix the two, then it becomes a very confused strategy. Because then you're looking at numbers to meet a growth pattern that is expected of investors. So by breaking the two is, I think, our biggest advantage, the most successful step that we took, Pradeep.
Thanks, Kishore. That's really great points out there. So, Sri, I'll just come back to you quickly. You talked about the consolidation in the industry. You talked about the competition, which are like 10 times, 100 times bigger than you. And that forced you to see that, okay, either I had to acquire or I had to get acquired. So in this process, you sold one software product company and software services company. Can you tell us what was the difference when you sold the software product company and then when you sold the services company? Was there any difference in the whole process? Can you just any nitty-gritties about that particular process?
Well, when we sold the product company, it was more of a technology play. We needed to go find somebody who has a gap that looking to fill, because they don't have a particular product. For example, Avaya was pretty weak in the mid-market, and with our product, we were a niche product with a price. We were a price leader, so it fit into their offering. But that was much easier to slide it in. When it comes to services, when you look at it, we were 3,500 people when we were servicing, biggest consumer electronics, biggest search engine out there. You can name, you know the names by what I said. But when I looked at them, they were starting to wonder, there are too many vendors that they're outsourced to. And this market, the outsourced market, is all cost, all based on cost. And they were increasing their costs as they're increasing the number of vendors in managing those vendors. So they started looking at consolidating those vendors so they can bring the cost down, as well as they get economies of scale if they go to a bigger vendor, because they could go offer a bigger vendor, 5,000 people, immediately you get a lot more cost reduction than having 5 different vendors doing 1,000 people each. when they started seeing that, we started wondering whether we will be part of that bigger plan, because we cannot give 5,000 people to a biggest search engine or biggest consumer electronics product out there. When we saw that, we can see the writing on the wall. Either we, go find somebody who can back us up with that kind of volumes with our existing customers, or, we go, acquire a big company like Kishore was saying, go raise $100 million, and I could very well buy another, 10,000, 5,000 people company, right? At that point, we looked to buy companies first, and we couldn't find, for two reasons. One, culture is a big thing you have to look at. When you buy a company, there is no culture fit, you end up failing anyway. And two, we needed geographical coverage. When we looked at all that, we couldn't find anyone, and we felt we were running out of time, because I could see our customers are starting to release RFPs. That's when we said, okay, let's go find a bigger company than us who has, bigger name and bigger brands. And our customers are mostly disruptors, new age companies, plus these, consumer electronics and whatnot. So we looked at multiple companies, and we liked 24/7 InTouch because they have a similar culture, number one. They have the biggest disruptors as customers in their customer list. So we felt our customers can take advantage of that. And that's what happened. Those customers who are looking to consolidate actually kept us because of 24/7 InTouch, right? And we had a technology play with our services. That was a niche we were, offering to the customers, and they had a technology play. So it matched very well. And now this company is still private, managed by Ontario teachers. And I'm sitting on the board, I'm managing their India, and I only cashed out 70%, 30% is with them. And I'm looking to get another bite at the apple when they sell eventually.
Great. So Sri, when you sold the first company, the software product, what was the learning that you applied in the second exit?
Well, the biggest learning was what Kishore was saying. We picked a banker, or a small banker, not many people out of San Francisco. There are like 4 or 5 people. We ended up doing a lot of work because they didn't offer all the services that you would otherwise offer from a banker perspective. And we ended up making some mistakes, how we structured the deal. I mean, we had money left on the table with Avaya, and they didn't escrow it because they said we're $1 billion company, we don't have escrow. Eventually they bankrupted, and we lost that money, So we were not good at negotiation, And then second company, we picked Rothschild. They're much bigger, as you know, and they have a lot more experience in BPO sector. And we really looked at the guy who's going to represent us. He has a lot of respect in the industry. And he goes by first name basis. He can call any public company or private company, $1 billion companies, and introduce us, and they listen to him. So that is where we actually made a shift, and we buttoned down our finances, customer contracts, because when we sold NovaSoft, they were all over the map. So we created a cloud and we put everything there, and we audited our finances. As a private company in US, you don't need to audit, but we had an audit done ahead of the time. And like Kishore said, we had rest of the management working on the company, working on growing the business. Only me and a couple of other people focused on selling. So we didn't want to lose the opportunity to grow. And eventually, if we don't sell, we don't want to fall flat on our face.
Thanks. Prashant, you talked about that many companies approached you also in your company. So were you hunted, or were you went on hunting for companies to be acquired?
That's a very good point. I think one of the differences I've noticed here is that this is a principle, which I learned because I felt so many times. I was explaining to you. It's always better to be bought than to be sold. Okay. So these people talk about exit. Exit is, remember guys, it's always better to be bought than to be sold. And to be bought, you have to build. You have to build, you have to drive value. When you drive value, you might do badly in a quarter here and there, but if Google doesn't buy you, Microsoft will buy you. If Microsoft doesn't buy you, somebody else will buy you. Now there are like 100 other companies, Salesforce will buy you. So there will be people who will come and buy you. Don't worry about this damn exit. Anybody who plans a business on an exit, you're losing your head. You're just wasting your time. Seek joy. Believe that the product that you drive, believe in the product that you build, believe in your people, and believe in the value that you drive for your customers. They will come. Be bought. Don't be sold. This is my one suggestion I would make. Secondly, I would say, because all of us are techie guys, never underestimate the power of internal controls. So I think Kishore said that very well actually. Never underestimate the value of internal controls, because when you look at your numbers, when you put all these spreadsheets in, when you try to sell a company, if anybody says, why is that? And if you say, but look at this. However, what kills your valuation is but and however. Your statements should speak for themselves. So remember my third advice. First is build before you exit. Don't focus on exit, build. A lot of people buy. Let people be bought rather than be sold. And thirdly, I will say, never give an opportunity for but and however. However, this quarter, but that, however, I did that quarter. Therefore, this month and this month, this revenue. The moment you say but and however, 10 million, 20 million is being written off your valuation in the potential buyer. So don't leave her. So hire a world-class CFO, build a great company. I've always underestimated world. I was beaten up by the board to get a new CFO. I refused because I liked the old guy. And finally, when I got the guy, I said, shit, what was I missing here? So all of you techie guys who are hearing this, hire a world-class CFO, because there's those buts and those howevers knock off million. Lastly, I would say one thing, be good. So in terms of when you see the returns, when you have, let's say, a company is willing to pay $750 million to buy your company, as in our case, make sure that you create a hierarchy of people who should get this. At the lowest end of the hierarchy is you. After you are the better, higher than you are the people who gave you the money, the venture capital guys. And for you, you should be the lowest. You know why? Because how many chapatis will you eat? You get 50 million, instead of 50 million, you make 75 million. Okay, that 25 million, what? You'll eat what? Puliyodare, 2 doses, and you'll get diabetes. So the point is just focus on what you get. Second step is investors. They gave you their money. Never lose your focus on the people who work for your company. I've always fought for them. I've set aside like more than $100 million, $150 million for people who stayed back. Because those are the people, their families, it gets distributed, and it's a career for them. For you, it's, do I buy a Cessna or do I buy this? The decision is they're silly decisions we take, frankly. And I come from a very, middle-class family in Malakpet, I grew up in Malakpet. So I don't know, this is a hierarchy, I would say. Do good. And this do good for me, I'll tell you my personal experience. When I put this out like this in the spread, in the negotiation with the CEO of the other company, he came back with $50 million more for me, saying that you're doing it for your employees. I've never seen a CEO do that. So please do good and create this hierarchy in your distribution. Do good for your customers, of course. Leave runway. Means everybody that you leave behind should have a big runway. Customers should grow. Employees should grow. Investors should be happy. And you can go sit down and eat your chapatis.
Thanks, Prashant. Those are really great inputs to the audience here. Thanks a lot, Prashant. So, Kishore, you talked about one of the things that you mentioned, which I think other two also said very openly and clearly, that when you're looking for exit, you don't get involved with it. You try to get the right people, right bankers, or right whoever it is, the consultants and everybody. So Sri mentioned that he got one of the best bankers from his first exit learning. So can you tell us how you went about doing that process? How do you manage to get one of the best people to look for your exit strategy and prepare your company so that you get the best buyer coming to your door?
Just a very quick thing before I answer your question, Pradeep. Like Sri, we had when we were looking at the exit, we had a couple of options, obviously, and because it was a global process. One of the options was 80% on the table, 20% in 12 months. And the other option was 60% on the table, 40% spread over 3 years, 1, 2, and 3 tranches. The difference in the second offer was 20% more. Very tempting. And the great team that we assembled got onto the act. They talked about it among themselves. And in a one-hour call, they convinced me why a 20% additional was not worth the risk. And good for us that we listened to them, because by the time the third payment would have fallen due, that company went bankrupt, and bankrupt for fraud in Germany. So I mean, those are kind of things which kind of scare you when you go into the market. But to come back to your question, talk about your company to all your friends, colleagues, everybody. Because if you think you're running a business which is secret and you don't want to talk about it, you're never going to get the best references. And all our teams that got assembled were purely by reference. And I can tell you that my investment banker is somebody whom I had never heard about. A casual conversation by a friend of mine with Mr. Nandan Nilekani, whom I don't know except as a face and a great person in the newspapers, recommended, suggested that I should look at this company out of the US to look at an exit for us. Once they came on board, and it was a tough process, they wouldn't even take my calls, so I had to convince them that we were a company which was good, which was smart, and which was worth looking for an exit. They came on board, then they came ahead and recommended to us the rest of the team. And I think it's important that we give a lot of leeway to the teams to perform. If we micromanage the process, that's where you lose out on the value.
That's what even Prashant also mentioned, but and whatever and all like. So thanks, Kishore. So we have only 5-6 minutes left. So I'll just give 1 minute each of you because I am not seeing any Q&A from the audience yet. Reshmi, are we having any Q&A?
You're not getting any relevant questions related to the strategies exit.
Okay, then we will. I'll just ask them to conclude the thing, and then I'll conclude at the end. So Sri, Prashant, and Kishore, you have 1 minute each to give the last any suggestions to the audience out here. So Sri, please go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Pradeep. I really enjoyed listening to Prashant and Kishore, their experiences, and I can draw a lot of similarities in what I've done, what I went through. Like Prashant, I came from a middle class family, but you have to keep your feet on the ground all the time and keep, making sure you create a culture where it's a subservient culture, And one of the things for me now, toughest challenge is post-exit. I think exit, in my view now, much easier than dealing with post-exit trauma because you tend to lead from the, you're the leader in the company now. You're part of a bigger company, and your influence is radically reduced. And how do you deal with it? I think I was telling my wife the other day, I have less number of sleeps now than before. When customers are yelling at you, employees are all stressed out. I think you sleep well because you got used to it for 20 years. Now I have nothing to do. I'm, figuring out what to do next is keeping me up all night. So I really look at, my advice to people is, it is not the exit, is the post-exit is going to be a lot more difficult in my personal view,
Prashant?
I totally, that's a wonderful thing to say. I'll tell you, one of the things you should be always scared of in post-exit, you'll be sitting at home and your wife is not used to seeing you at home. You kind of intrude into her space. So if you plan to exit, guys, get a room like I did in the corner somewhere where she can't hear you. And in the morning, pick your lunch box and go sit there and pretend that you're at work because she will kick you out of the house. And you're a mess. You're a real mess post-exit. And going back to the point, this is the first Q4 in the last 25 years, I think, where I didn't care what's happening in Q4 and year end. Somebody else is worrying about it. But my recommendation would be beware of the wife.
Thank you, guys. Thankfully, that's not really a problem for me because being a serial entrepreneur, I'm used to being jobless every 5-6 years and before I pick up the next venture. My only takeaway from my entire process, not just MRL Post-time, but my prior ones also, is about economic value that you're going to create for yourself and your team. And I think the moment you lift your head away from that and go into personal glory, where you are known as Kishore of Posnet rather than just as Kishore Kotapalli, I think that's where you're bringing in ego into play and you're bringing in your employability or your social status into play. I think that's a very key important thing that to differentiate, saying you and the company are not the same. And whether you have the stamina with you to build $100 million company or $1 billion company or a $10 billion company, it's absolutely perfect. You should go with your stamina, but never lose sight of the fact that it's the economic value that you're going to create for yourself personally, and the management team should be the guiding factor. Because if you dilute to become a $10 billion company, you dilute to such an extent that at the end of the day, after 10 years, your take home is going to be, let's say, a couple $100 million versus $100 million today. I would rather go for the $100 million today than a risky $500 million five years down the road. And I think that is something that I would like all entrepreneurs to consider before they go for a capital raise.
Thanks, Kishore. Thanks, Sri. Thanks, Prashant. So I think we're almost at the end of the session here. So I just like to conclude that Prashant mentioned, hire me, hire the best CFO. Once you are at the stage where you are now ready to get acquired, and go with the bot, not trying to sell the company. Sri Manani talked about getting the best banker. He talked about the technology play that he has built so that it complements the whoever is acquired or the cultural matches there. And Kishore mentioned about don't be secretive about the company. Talk to your friends, talk to your well-wishers, talk to the people around. You never know where you'll get the next advice, a good advice from and all like. I think you have spoken not only about the exiting strategy, talked about the philosophy, post-exit and everything. So there's a lot of takeaway from this particular session, even for me. So really appreciate Sri, Kishore and Prashant for taking your time off. And Prashant, thanks for, I know it's almost midnight there now. So really appreciate being on the session. So Reshmi, over to you. And thanks, TIE TGS 2020 for giving us that opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pradeep. Thank you, everyone. We'd like to thank you all the panelists for sharing their entrepreneurial journey and phenomenal experience with the audience. Hope to connect with you all soon. Thank you, Arun, for organizing the session. Thank you so much.